Welcome to another video tutorial. In this video, we're actually going to continue on from the topic of the previous video where we created an in-game clock. And in this particular video, we're going to expand that functionality and create days, months, and years so we can have a functioning calendar tied to our in-game clock. So we're going to expand this out so that now we've got basically seconds and minutes and hours, and we're, changing the time of, the lighting of the day and things based on the hour. We can also record when it's been a day, when it's been 24 hours, and then that can increase a day. And then that day can then increase months after a certain amount of time, etc., etc., etc. So to do this, we're going to go through this step by step. So if you want to follow along, then feel free to do so. So the first thing we'll do this in a sort of order of process. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the game configuration section. Going to go to global properties, and we're going to set up a handful of global properties that we're going to need for our calendar system. So we need about 6 or 7 properties. So first of all, we need a number. So select number in the list and click add property. And we're going to name this day. And it's going to start with the value 1. Okay, so day 1. Then we need a string. And this is going to be, you could probably call these different names to me, but this is just, as I was coming up with this mechanic, these are the names I ended up using. So we have one called day of week. You could call this day text, might be a better name for it. I'm going to use day of week because that's what I've used for my scripts. So just to keep things consistent, I'm going to stick with that. Otherwise, I'll forget that I changed it and then we'll have problems with scripts not working. So day of week is a string, and it's going to default value is going to be Monday. So then we have another string, add property. We're going to change the name of this to day underscore suffix, and the value by default is going to be first, like that. This is basically going to be the text version of this. So if this is the first, this is the sort of the text version of it. If that makes sense. So next we have another number variable, which is called day of week underscore num. Now this has a purpose, and I'll explain a little bit more about this when it comes up. But this is going to start as 0, so leave that as it is. And then we need to add another number, so click add property again. This is going to be month. So just like day, this is going to start at 1. So this will be January, the first month. We then need another string property, add that. This is going to be month underscore text, and this is going to default to the text version of that, which is January. And then the last one we need is a number variable called year, and that can default to 2023, let's say. Okay, you can put in any year you want. This will be the year that your game starts when you click a new game. So if you want to set your game in the 70s or something, or the 80s or whatever, then you can set that like that. Okay, we'll use the current date because it's absolutely 2923, isn't it? We'll use the current date, current year as it stands. So those are all the global properties that we've put into the user interface. There's a couple that we need to put into the startup, which we'll go over in a second. But just to reiterate what we've created a number global property called day, which has the initial value of 1. Got a string called day of week, which is Monday. It's the first day of the week. Then we've got day suffix, which is a string, which has the first in it. Then we've got the day of the week number. That has a purpose, not for display, but for part of the code, which we'll get to. That starts as 0. Then we have a month number, which is 1 because it should start on the first of the month, which is January. So then we have the month text version of that, which is January, which is a string. And then last thing, you have the year, which is a number, and you put your starting year of your game in there. So again, depending on what year you want to situate your game, you'll set the first of the starting year as your initial value. Okay, so that's the global properties in regards to the game configuration setup. Next, we need to go to our startup script, and we need to add a couple of global properties. But actually, we're not ready for that yet, because the next thing we need to do is what's going to go into these two global properties, which we're going to put in startup, are a couple of JSON files, which we don't have yet. So what you want to do now is you want to right-click on any file in your Game Explorer. So we'll right-click on the Our script, and we're going to click Open File Location, and that will take us to here. What we want to do is we want to go out of the scripts folder, because that's the one we were in, to our main project folder. So here we are in the Game Clock folder. We want to make a new folder, so right-click, Create New Folder. We're going to call this lowercase data, and the first thing we're going to create is a new text file called month_data, and this is going to be a .json file. So make sure it's not .txt, make sure it's .json, click OK, and there's our JSON file. So we're going to right-click on this and open it with any text editor will do, anything that can edit text, but obviously if you've got a coding one like Notepad++ or something, that will be most useful. So I've actually got the JSON code to one side already, so let me just quickly grab that for this. So that's month data. So let me just open this with Notepad++. So I'll copy this and then I'll explain what this is. So basically, go back to our blank one for a second. So what's going to be inside this JSON file is, first of all, an array. So an array is open and close square brackets. So just open and close a set of square brackets and then put a gap in between. So line 2 is a gap in between. Press tab. And then this is going to be a codex inside the array. So open and close curly brackets, and then press enter, and then press tab. And then inside here is going to be our codex. So the first thing we want, let me just take a quick look, is we want month in quotes. That's the key of our codex, colon, and then the value is going to be January, close speech marks, comma, and then the next key is month_days, colon, and then the number of days in that month. So there's 31 days in the month of January, so put 31 in. Then do a comma. We just check. No, sorry. Not a comma there, a comma there, okay? Because this is our first single entry into our codex, okay? So just to repeat that, we'll go down to the next line. We'll open and close another codex. Press enter twice, tab in. We're now going to copy this, paste. The month is going to be February. And the days is going to be 28. Now, obviously, in real life, February is a leap. Is a month that has varying days depending on if it's a leap year or not. I'm ignoring leap years just because it's just for now. It's going to be too complicated to think about not only how many days are there in a month, but one month can potentially every 4 years have a different amount of days. It's like, let's not be that realistic. We'll stick to the amount of days typically you'd have in a month, So at least we've got some realism, but we don't have to be super duper realistic about it. And then put another comma at the end of that codex. And you're basically going to repeat that for every month of the year. Okay. So I've done that already. So I'm just going to grab the rest of these. So we'll grab March all the way down to December. And it's important to note, let me just put these in. It's important to note that for March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, and November, you put a comma at the end of each of those curly brackets. But December, because it's the last entry, it's the last codex in this array, no comma at the end of the curly bracket here, okay? And that's our JSON file. So this is basically a JSON file that stores the name of the month, and how many days are in that respective month, and then save that. So there's our month data JSON file. So that's the first of the JSON files we need. Then we need another one. So going back to game clock data, we're going to right click, create a new text file. And this is going to be week underscore days. Again, delete the .text and put .json in instead. And edit with Notepad. This again is going to be an array, so open and close square brackets, press enter twice, go up, press tab, open and close a codex, press enter twice, go up and press tab. So what's going to go into this JSON? Let me just remind myself. Weekdays. Okay, so this is basically the day of the week and the text for that day. So in essence, what we have is the first key is day underscore num. So what's the number of the day going from 1 to 7? So in this case, day would be 1. And then I don't believe that's a string. No, it is a number. So just 1. And then the next key is, I think, day text or something like that. You can obviously call it whatever you want, but I'm just going to follow my own example. And then colon, and then Monday, and then put another comma. And you're basically going to repeat that for days 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, basically going Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So you'll end up with this. So once again, we'll just copy this and pop it back in. And make sure again that there's no comma at the end of the Sunday one, but there should be a comma at the end of every other day of the week. Okay, so there's our Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and the numbers that correspond to that day in the week. Okay, hit save, and that's that done. Now there is one more JSON file we need to create, so we may as well do that now because you'll see there is actually 3, and day suffix is the other one we need to create. So what I'm actually going to do is just copy that into the game clock folder for now. This is quicker, and I'll just quickly open it and show you what you put into it. This again is just an array. So just to go over how you would do this from scratch, open and close square brackets, go into the middle, press enter twice, go up, press tab. This isn't a codex, it's just an array of strings. Now you'll notice that the very first entry, I've put a dash like that, and I'll explain why we've done that later. And then I've put a comma, and then everything else is basically how many days you would get in a full month. So, the maximum amount of days you can have. Obviously, things like February would only have 28, but it doesn't matter if there's more in this list because we're only going to pull out the ones that are relevant. But this basically is a list of every single day you can have in a maximum amount of days in a month, and the suffix for each number. So first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, etc. Okay, and that's your array. So make sure that every entry has a comma next to the actual entry rather than, because it's not a codex, it's actually just inside the main array. Okay, so once you've done that, you'll have this, hit save, and there's your day underscore suffix.json. Okay, so as long as you've set those up as you've seen in this video, then even if you don't immediately understand what they're for, we'll get to that when we start putting it all together. But for now, you just need those JSON files set up in the data folder of your project. Okay? So back to RPG in a Box. Let's go to our startup script, and we need to create these global properties. So the first one we're going to create is global.property, open and close brackets, square brackets, and this is going to be called month index. I'm going to shorten it to dex just because it's quicker. So month dex equals, and then data, open and close square brackets, and then the name of the JSON file that's going to go into here, in this case month_data. So this is the one that's got the month name and how many days there are in that month. That's going to go into this global property at the start of the game. The reason why we're putting the data into JSON files, because we could do it in the startup script. We could type codex, and then we could do month, January, month, days, 31, for example, and then do all the others. But it actually twofold. First of all, this data would then be taking up memory in your game. But more importantly, it takes ages to compile if you actually build the codex by hand in your script. Whereas if you bring it in via a data file, when you click apply and save, it doesn't actually compile the data that's inside that JSON file. So it speeds up your compile times. So any data that you can move out of a script and store in a JSON file and bring in to your script, that's another handy use for JSONs, is it cuts down significantly, especially if you're building a lot of codexes and arrays. It saves considerable amount of time on saving your scripts. So data month_data.json. And that's going to load that codex at the start of the game into this global property. And then the other one we need, global.property, and I think I called this day index. And this is going to equal data. And I believe this is the week days one. So week_days.json. So this is basically going to be the numbers from 1 to 7 and their respective day words. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, February. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's going to be in this daydex global property. Okay. Click apply and save, and you can see that just takes seconds. Whereas if we'd put the actual codex into this script, it would have taken a long time. So that's all the global properties done. So we've done two in the startup, and the reason why we've done them in the startup is because the ones that you do in the user interface in the game configuration section, if it would open, there we go, you can only choose between string, number, and Boolean. You can't choose array or codex or data. So if you want anything beyond these three, you have to do it in the script. Okay, so those are the global properties done. So if you've done all of those and you're up to date, we'll move on. So next we need to change our widget that we had our clock on, this one. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to expand it down. Let's say maybe not that much, maybe 5. I'll do. And we're going to put We're going to put a couple of text labels in. So we're going to put one, let's say just there, and we'll expand that out. Then you're going to click element properties, and we're going to change the text that's in here. So we're going to click the insert expression button. So the first thing we want is a global property. And then the one we want to add is the day. So this is going to be day. So global property day. Then you want to add a backslash. Oh no, it's a /. Could be either, it doesn't really matter. And then we're going to add another one. So click insert expression again, global property. This is going to be month. Obviously, I'm based in the UK, so we do it day, month, year. In the States, it would be month, day, year. So you can set it how you want. But And then you're going to put another slash, and then you click insert expression, and this is going to be global property year. So this is basically just our day, month, year. Basically, we're doing the equivalent of that, okay? But we're putting the global property, then a slash, then the next global property, a slash, and then the next global property. So that will display our dates, sort of thing, like that, okay? So that's what is in there. And then we're going to put another text label just underneath. This is going to stretch all the way because there's going to be quite a bit of text in here. I'm also going to make this 20, just a bit smaller, just so that we can fit more text in. So this is going to be, first of all, a global property. So click the insert expression button. This is going to be day of the week first. So day of week. That will be in there. Then put a comma, a space, and then insert expression. And then we want month text. So month text. And then we want a space, and then insert expression, and then the last global property, day, suffix. Now, it should be pointed out that what this is basically going to create is it will end up looking like this in-game. For example, Tuesday, March the 1st. That's the order that we have it at the moment. If you want to swap these around, so if you wanted it to look like that, then you would just swap after the comma, you would just swap global property, month text, and day suffix. You'd switch them, okay? Right, so that's our widget setup, okay? So we can now click save. So now the rest of this is code. So let's get to that now. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go back to where we left off, which is the hour script. So we're going to open this up, and we want to think about when should the hour, when should the day number go up? Well, the day number should obviously go up at midnight, okay, which is 12 a.m. What we have here is we have this code already, which we can make use of, where it says if the hour is 12, and then if it's 12, if the global property 12 hours AM, then it should set it to PM. Otherwise, it should set it to AM. We're using that bit of code here for the display on our widget for this AM PM part. Okay, so we're going to use that code to also trigger a new day, because if it's 12 PM and then it's switching it over to AM, then we at the same time want to switch over to a new day. So just under where we say else global property 12 hours should be AM, we want to put a new line in, and we're going to type execute script, open and close parentheses, put a string in there, and we're going to call this script new_day. Now this script obviously doesn't yet exist, but the nice thing about putting it into a separate script is we don't have to then write all of the code that we would put inside this script. In this script, we can just trigger it. So we can now essentially leave this script alone, and we can go and now create our day and month and year system completely separate to the clock. It's just that the clock triggers it, okay? So every 12 a.m., it's going to execute our calendar system to update itself. So we now move on to the next script. And for some reason, this needs saving, so let's do that. So we're going to create a new script now called new_day. Okay, click edit and clear it out. So the first thing we need to do is we need to increment the day number, because obviously it's a new day. So every midnight, it should increment the day global property. So type global.property day plus equals 1. So it's gone up in 1. What we also want to do is increment the day of the week number Okay, so that goes up by 1 as well. So global property DOW underscore num plus equals 1. Now we're going to do a check. If global dot property day of the week number is equal to 7, then that means it's Sunday. So if it's Sunday, we want to set global property day of the week num to 0 to reset it, basically. So it only goes up to 7 and then cycles back round to 0. Next, we need to type global, on a new line, global dot property, and then this is day of week, so day underscore of underscore week equals global dot property. Once we've finished typing these, I'll of course explain what everything is doing, but let's just get all this put in place first. So this is going to equal daydex. So this is our codex that we've loaded in from the JSON file. We then need to open and close square brackets again. And we're going to type inside the square brackets global.property DOW num. This is why we're using that DOW num, because we need it for the array. And then specifically, we want to open and close square brackets again. And this is the entry in the JSON file, day underscore text. And that will bring in the day text. So we're storing inside this global property day of week the text that's inside that JSON file for the relevant day of the week. So this is going to be Tuesday or Saturday or whatever, depending on this number. Because basically what it's doing is it's looking into the JSON file that we load in startup, and it's specifically looking at this entry in the index, in the array. You know, is it Tuesday? Is it Wednesday? Is it Thursday? It's going to have a number next to it, right? Tuesday is 2, Wednesday is 3. So this will equal a number. It's going to go to the codex that's in this global property. It's going to look up the number based off of this number, because this number is going to be based off the clock, based off, you know, what day of the week it is. And it's going to get the text for that day of the week, and it's going to put it into this property. Okay, does that make sense what this line is doing? So we'll move on. And then we need to create a local variable, because we're only using this particular variable inside this script, but we just want to do a check. So create a local variable $day_limit_check equals, and this is going to equal global.property, and this is going to be monthdex. So again, bring in the month. This is going to be global.property month, so it gets the month number. And then specifically we want to return month days. So this is going to bring in how many days are there in this particular month that we're on. And that's going to get stored into this local variable day_limit_check. So just like this one above, we're going to the month index, which we've brought in, that's got the text of the month plus how many days there are. We're grabbing the month, we're grabbing the index entry based off the number of the month. So for example, if it's February, then this number will be 2. So 2 in the index will be February, and then February will have an amount of days under this category. That's going to get stored into this local variable. So if it's February, for example, day_limit_check will equal 28. Okay. So then what we want to do, once we've done that, once we've stored in day_limit_check the number, we want to check if global.property day is greater than $day_limit_check. In other words, is the day that we're on now numerically bigger than the amount of days in this month, i.e. have we gone beyond the amount of days that should be in this month? So for example, let's continue with February. If global property day is now 29, that's one too many. It wouldn't be if it was a leap year, but we're ignoring leap years, right? So maybe February is a bad example, but January, for example, has 31 days. So if it was 32, we're a day over the limit, right? So if the day is over the limit, then we want to execute script, which we need to create, and it's going to be called new month, because we now start a new month. If we're a day over the last day of the month, then guess what? It changes month. So we're going to execute a script new month. What we also need to do is make sure that our day starts over again. So global property day goes back to being the first. And then end our if. And then the last thing we need to do is global.property day underscore suffix. We're going to grab our day suffix so we can put it into the widget. So global property day suffix equals data, and we're just going to bring it in. So data day underscore suffix.json. But we're not going to grab the whole thing. We're going to specifically grab global.property day. And that will be our day suffix. So that will be the first if it's the first, or it'll be the second if it's the second, etc. Because it's going to take this number and it's going to find the text that goes with that number. So that would, for example, then be the first. So that would come back with that. Whoops. Come back with that. Yeah. And that's going to get stored in there. Click apply and save. Oh, hang on. We have a spelling mistake there. Or to be more precise, a type-in mistake. And there we go. So there's our new day script. Okay. Almost there. We've got literally one more script to do, and this should, fingers crossed, be all you need, and it should now just come together when we test. So, new script, new underscore month. Click edit, delete the text that's in there. So this is quite straightforward. First of all, what we want to do is increment the month number because it's a new month. So global property month goes up, so plus equals 1. If global.property month is equal to 13, then, and I shouldn't need to tell you that there aren't 13 months in a year. So what that basically means is we've reached a year. So if global property month has become 13, then first of all, global.property month cycles round to the first again. So it's January. And in global.property year plus equals, well, okay. So if it's 2023, it will now be 2024. Okay. Anything else? That ends, but there is something else. We need global.property month text equals global.property month dex, which is our index. And then we're going to need the month, I presume. Yep. But we're going to do -1. We need to take 1 away from the month number. I'll explain why in a second. And then we need to grab the month. Okay. And then semicolon. Apply and save. And that is our new month script. So what we're basically saying is every month, increment the month count. If it's now reached 13, then it should go around to January again. It should also increment the year, because now we've gone on and we've reached a full year. And we're also just going to grab, at the end of every month, whenever we update a month, notice how this is outside this if. So this is going to happen regardless of whether it's a year or not, as is this. But this stuff will only happen if it's been a year, okay? So every month we're going to update the text in the widget based off of the month in the codex. Based on the month it is -1. And I'll explain why we're doing -1 in a moment. But before we get to that, let me just quickly talk about year. You could obviously, instead of doing this, you could execute script new year. But I realized that unless you're doing anything other than just incrementing the year, you can just put that in your script, in the month script, and that's it. Years are very quick. Obviously, if you want something to happen, depending on if it's if it reaches 2027 or something like that, you want something to happen, then yes, you might want to create a separate script for handling new years. So you could say, you could have a separate script that says global property year plus equals 1. And then you could say if global property year equals 2027 or something, then have things happen. So yes, if you were going to have things happen based on what year it ends up being, then yes, branch off and put it all in a separate script. But for now, I'm not doing that. I'm just literally making a calendar that just counts through months, days, and years. So all the year needs to do is just go up every year. So it's fine to be on its own at the end of the if statement, okay? Now, why are we deducting 1 from global property month? So to explain that very quickly, let's take a look at the game configuration global properties thing. Now, we could address this in the in either the JSON file or the property itself, but basically our month global property is a number value, is a number property that starts at 1, okay? Now, arrays don't start at 1, okay? You should know by now, if you've watched enough of my videos explaining this, arrays always start at 0, okay? So if this array had 5 things in it, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, it's got 5 things in it, but if you wanted to return number 1, it would actually be 0. If you wanted to return number 2, it would be 1. So in other words, every number inside this array is offset by 1. Okay, so perhaps numbers are a bad example because we're using numbers. So let's do it this way. Hello, goodbye, yeah, something like that. And we'll do one more. Hello, goodbye, wait. I don't know. So if you wanted to return hello, it wouldn't be 1. It's not the first thing in the array, even though technically it is, because arrays start at 0. So that would be the first thing in the array. So 0 is hello. If you wanted the second thing in the array, i.e. goodbye, it's 1. Yeah. And the second thing in the array, the third thing in the array is 2. So everything is offset by 1 when it comes to arrays. Okay. So because our global property month dex it's a codex inside an array, we want to grab the first thing in the array, which is a 0. So if we open up our JSON file for a moment, month data, open with Notepad, you can see January is the first. It's the first entry in the array. So technically this should be month 1, but in the array it's month 0. So that's why in our code, if it is January, i.e. if this number is 1, we're deducting 1 from it when we grab from the array. So this becomes 0. So it grabs the first thing in the array, which is January. So it grabs the right month. If we didn't do this, because this equals 1, it's actually going to grab February, because February then is the second thing in the array, i.e. 1. Yeah. Again, going back to the example here, if this was January and this was February, for some people I don't need to explain this, but for, I just want to make sure that if there are people watching this that are still struggling with understanding arrays and things, any chance I get to explain how they work, I'm going to take the opportunity to do it. So forgive me if I'm repeating things that you're already familiar with. But here we have array, January, February, and let's say that said March instead of wait. Okay. If the global property month was currently 1, then that's not going to grab January, even though it is the first month. It's going to grab the second entry in the array, because 1 is therefore the second entry in the array. So it's actually going to grab February. So by minusing the 1 from 1, the month then becomes 0 if it was January, and therefore it will grab January in the array. Does that make sense? So that's why we're deducting 1. Now, a way to counter that is how I've done it with, is it this one? No, not this one. With the suffix 1. So with the suffix 1, what I've done is I've left the default value, it's this one, I believe, DOW_num. I've left the default value at 0. So it will default to 0, because if you go back to our new day script, we have this. If the global property number is 7, then it should cycle back around to a new week. So it's not going back to 1, it's going back to 0. And so when we then grab, if it's a Tuesday or a Wednesday, if we grab, is it the 1st or the 2nd or the 3rd or the 4th or the 22nd or whatever, by putting a blank 0 entry in, then, because I basically know that DOW_num is never going to equal 0, because although I am setting it, let's just double check actually. Just want to remind myself how I'm doing this. When I'm setting the day suffix, I'm actually, I'm using day. So yeah, ignore all of this. Ignore, I'm wrong. This is not the bit that grabs from the suffix. I'm using this number, okay? Now, day always equals 1, okay? I know it will never equal 0. So instead, another way of basically doing this, and this is the reason why I did this, so I could show you 2 ways in the same video. One way is to deduct 1 whenever you grab from an index. The other way is to put into your index itself a blank first entry. Because if you know that you're never going to grab the first entry because you're never really going to equal 0 in your variables, then in your JSON file or your array, by having a blank 0 entry, then it means, it will default to just working. So it will push everything down basically. So my first entry naturally is my second, because there's a blank one in entry 1. Yeah. So I've just deliberately catered for that, in my actual array by making sure that the first entry is blank. I deliberately make it just a non-entry. I'll just put a dash in there. And then what should be in this index is then entry 2 onwards. Yeah. And then that way my variables can begin at 1, starting from 1 without having to start from 0 just to cater for the array, if that makes sense. So there's just 2 ways of doing it, and you decide which one you prefer. So that should be the script done. So if you've done all of that, we should now be in a position to test. Now, what I am going to do as well is just to speed things up, because at the moment it's tied to the clock. So every day, every 12 midnight, it's going to advance the clock. So let's test this first. So let's just click quick play and see where we're at. So here we go. Monday, January the 1st, 1/1/2023. The clock is ticking. So we'll wait till it's midnight, which is going to be 12 a.m. So we need to wait basically an entire day. So it's just midday now. And then we should see it tick from 1st to the 2nd of January 2023. And this should change to Tuesday, January the 2nd. We just wait for this. So it's now changing to evening. And then at 8, it should change to night. And then at 12 a.m., which it's getting to very quickly, this should change to the 2nd, and this should be Tuesday, January the 2nd. Oh, got some errors there. We'll check those out in a second. But there we go. So null, we got an issue here. But 2nd of the 1st, 2023, we need to fix that, and January the 2nd. So that's all worked, but for some reason, no. Let's just take a quick look. First thing we're going to do, we'll cover this anyway, because we were going to do this regardless of the error or not, and this would have speed up testing anyway, is I'm going to go to the game configuration. I suggest you do the same. Go to input bindings, scroll down, add a binding. I'm going to use the L key, run script, new day. This will just allow us to cycle through the calendar via a keyboard command rather than just waiting for it to cycle days. So I'm going to quick play again, just so I can see what happens if I press the hotkey for that. Yeah. So it's an issue with showing the day, because everything else works. I know the issue. Yeah, if you've been following along, it took me a little while to work this out. You have to put the global properties before the start clock, because the start clock, once that ticks off, startup is basically at that point stuck in a loop. Okay, so anything after this point is not going to happen. So make sure everything happens, gets set before you kick off the clock, because the clock, this function here that we've got in our global functions, this while true is going to forever trap the code, in this case your startup, because it's the startup script that calls this function. This entire script is now going to be stuck basically on line 5 forever. So anything 6, 7 onwards, it's not going to happen. So the issue was my data files were not being stored into the global properties, and that's why we were getting that error. So make sure they're above the start clock. Okay, set everything up and then kick off the clock. So let's now run it again. So we could wait for a day, or I could press the L key, and you can see we've now gone to Tuesday, January the 2nd. If I keep pressing L, Wednesday, January the 3rd, the 4th, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Should loop now back round now to Monday, and it's Monday, January the 8th. Let's go to the 28th. That should be the last day in February, so it should now go to March the 1st, which it does. And obviously we can keep going. And let's just check the year goes up. So if we just rapidly shoot through the months. I'm going to let the clock do it as well in a minute. So when it gets to about 11:30, I'll stop spamming the L key just in case. So let it do it on its own. So now it's the 28th, done by the clock rather than the hotkey. Let's just continue for a moment. We're in September now. October. November. And in December, of which there are 31 days. So there we go, Monday, December the 31st. It should go back round to Tuesday, January the 1st, and it should go to 2024. Tuesday, January the 1st, 2024. Okay, so we now have a fully working calendar that basically goes through the days of the week, goes through the months, goes through the year, etc., etc. So apologies, it was a bit bumpy there towards the end. I wasn't expecting, I completely forgot about the start clock function trapping the script at that point, and therefore it wasn't setting anything underneath it. That was my mistake for not thinking about that and making sure that the global properties went before that, which then screwed up the rest of the loading of the scripts. But as long as you correct that mistake, everything we've done in this video should work. Again, just make sure that this is the important thing I had to fix as well, is the day limit check. You need to make sure it's global property month -1 so that you are getting the correct month number and therefore getting the right amount of days to make sure you haven't gone over a month, or not, as the case may be. So that brings us to the end of the video. So I hope you've been able to follow along, and I hope it kind of made sense. And if you've got any questions, as always, feel free to ask on the Discord. There'll be one more follow-up video to this. We're going to take a look in the final part to this. We're going to go even further than this now. We've got a working calendar, and we'll take a look at weather and seasons, and take a look at making things happen in December, for example, and various other times of the year. So now we've got a calendar, we can also, like we did with day and night cycle, once we got the clock working, we could have, the sun rising and setting, etc. Well, now we've got days and months and years working. We can have months, for example, tied to seasons. So we'll take a look at that in the next final video in this series, sort of mini series I've got going on with the clock and things. But as I say, that will wrap up this video. Thanks for watching. And if you have any questions, as I say, don't hesitate to ask. But that said, that'll wrap up this video. Thanks for watching.